Okay, math scholars, we have another lesson. So this is lesson 1-4 of Algebra 1, and it's called properties. It's actually really properties of real numbers. We know what real numbers are from our last lesson. But the fancy word properties just means rules, okay? They're math rules. Laws that we just accept as being true. Now, if you want to know why these rules are true, you come see me before or after school, and we will look up their history and have a good time doing that. But if you're not a big history buff and love math at the same time, you're just going to have to accept that these are the rules of the game, right? So we're going to start off with our two more popular properties or rules. Is we have the commutative property of addition and multiplication. I'll tell you the difference a little bit. And then we have the associative property of, I got a little bit lazy, I just put add in times, but it does mean the associative property of addition and multiplication. So take a moment. I'm going to step out of the way, hit pause, copy this stuff down, make sure it's in your notebook. All right, so now that you have it copied down, I'll go over it and explain it. So we have the commutative property of addition, right? Or just the commutative property. Well, what that means is it means you're going to change the order. That's the big, you got to change the order. So if you look, now this is how it looks in algebra. It says A plus B is the same thing as B plus A. Now, if you look at the order, right, this is an alphabetical order, A, B, and then all we did is we changed it, right? In math, it's 2 plus 3, which we know equals 5, but that's the same thing as if you turn them or flip them around and you get 3 plus 2, that's 5. Now, it's the same thing in multiplication, right? No difference. Now, it looks a little bit different in the fact that how we write it, if you just put A next to a B, that automatically means times or multiplication. So again, this is an order, AB, right? Equals, we change the order and we get BC. In math, it might look like 5 times 6, which is 30, but so is 6 times 5. And then a hybrid is, we'll see 8x, which does mean 8 times x. You can flip it around and put x times 8. This isn't real popular, but you can do it under the commutative property. Now, the other way I think of the commutative property is we get the word commute from that, which is driving your car from one place to another place. So I live here, I work here in San Clemente, but I live in Oceanside. Well, if I drive from Oceanside to San Clemente, it's 25 miles. If I take the exact same route home, it's still 25 miles. All I did was change the direction. We went from Oceanside to San Clemente, but it's the same thing from San Clemente to Oceanside. So that's another way I remember the commutative property of addition and multiplication. All right, so that brings us down to our next property or rule, and that's called the associative property of addition and multiplication. So with that one, we change the grouping. Okay, so grouping is basically what we call parentheses. And there are different types of grouping symbols. We'll go over those later. But we're talking about parentheses. And again, let's look at the algebra. So we have A plus, and then we have the grouping or of B plus C. So we put B and C inside parentheses. And then it's going to be the exact same thing as if I took and put the A with the B, so I went A plus B plus C. But look, the order is still the same. A, B, C, right? A, B, C, right? Still the same order. It's just they're in a different group, right? The B and C is grouped together. Over here, the A and B are grouped together. Now, same thing with multiplication. I'm just not using all the little time symbols. So I have A, parentheses, BC, so that means A times B times C. Or you just change it around. You put the parentheses around the A and the B, so you have A times B grouped together, times the letter C. So again, there's no change in the order. This is still an ABC order, right? So here's some examples of those. That 2 plus the grouping of 3 plus 5 is the same thing as 2 plus 3 plus 5. Or, again, 1, 2, 3. I put parentheses around the 2 and the 3. This time on this, I put the parentheses around the 1 and the 2. I'm going to give you some examples a little bit later on after a couple more properties where I'm going to try and fool you a little bit. So with that in mind, I want you to hold on to this thought. When we're working with the associative property, right? Think of the parentheses as a box, right? If you change what's inside the box, that's the associative. And we're going to hit on that because see, what's in the box? 3 and 5. What's in the box now? I changed it. That's 2 and 3. So if you change what's inside the box, that's the associative property. And that will make a little bit more sense later on. So we're going to put up some new properties on the board right now. All right. Here are the rest of our properties for this lesson. I'm just going to read them off quickly and then get out of the way so that you can hit pause and copy them down. So we have one called the identity property. We have the zero property. And then we have the multiplication property of -1. I'll probably just call it the -1 property. But go ahead, write down their definitions and any examples. Okay, so do that right now. All right, beautiful. All right, hopefully your notes look as nice as my board. All right, so under the identity property, now just like the commutative property and the associative property, we do have it under addition and we have one under multiplication. So under addition, it just means that you take any number, and if you add it to 0, you get that number. It's the identity property. This is what you started with. This is what you get. It's like, you know, looking at yourself in the mirror. You're not going to see somebody different. And if you do, that's going to be scary. All right. Now under multiplication, though, you got to take your number and you got to multiply it by 1. And it stays exactly the same. So under addition, it's adding 0, doesn't change anything. Under multiplication, if you multiply by 1, it doesn't change anything. So a couple examples would be, even if you have something like a fraction, a half. You go 1/2 plus 0, you're still going to get 1/2. If I take a negative number and I times it by a 1, I'm still going to get that exact same negative number. Right? Then we have the 0 property, which basically is anything times 0 is 0. Right? So again, the math way is A times 0 is 0. And so here's another example. 4 times 0, 0. Or you can even have something like this. 5 G's times 0, no more G's. It's just 0. All right? Then we have the multiplication property of -1, which basically just states anything times -1 becomes its opposite. So again, I have the letter A. It looks positive because there's no negative sign in front of it. But if I times it by -1, I can say -A or -1A. It changes it to its opposite. Over here, a more practical one, you have 10 times -1 equals a -10. And then on this one, if you start with a negative, like -3, and you multiply it by a -1, then it becomes its opposite. It becomes a 3. So this property of -1 or the -1 property just changes every number into its opposite. All right, so get ready for some examples. All right, go ahead and take a moment to write down these 4 examples. And always look at the instructions. So it says, name that property. Okay? like a game show. So you're going to name the property over here. So make sure that you have those written down. Hit pause and do that right now. And then afterwards, make sure that you come over, that you then write down these 3 example problems. But as you can see, it doesn't say name the property. It says the word simplify, right? So we're going to go over these. I would hit pause right now. Put down an answer. And then click play and see if your answer matches mine. That's how you're going to know that you're truly learning. So let's look at this. So over here we have x plus 12 equals 12 plus x. So you ask yourself, am I changing the order or am I changing the grouping? Is there a -1? Is there a 0? Well, obviously there's no -1, no 0. There's no parentheses, so it's not grouping. So the only thing that we're changing is the order. So A would be the commutative property. I'm just going to put COM for commutative property. B, now on B we have 5 times, and then we have the grouping 12 times x is the same thing as 5 times 12 grouping times x. And if you look at that one, that should be associative, right? So I'm going to abbreviate that one. Do not abbreviate it. ASS, put OC after it. If I see that in your notes, then you might be in trouble. Now, so again, the 5, the 12, and the x, they're all in the same order. Okay, so I didn't change the order, I just changed who I put in the box, in the groupings, the parentheses, okay? Now on C, I really want you to hit pause and try and figure that one on your own. So that's what you just did. All right, great. Did you come up with the commutative property? Some of you might have wrote associative property, and I was trying to trick you. Here's why. To show if you really have a good understanding. Take a look at this. I told you that the grouping is like in a box. Did you change what was in the box? Well, what's in this box? Well, the 3 and the 4 are in the box. Well, what's still in the box? The 3 and the 4. I changed their order, but I did not take them out of the box. So there was no change of my grouping. I just changed the order of what was in the box. But it's still 3 and 4 in the box. So watch out for that. Okay, it's not associative. I have a lot of students just automatically see parentheses. They think associative. No, you can fall for that trick. Right? This is commutative. Look at the order. 2, 3, 4. Well, now it's 4, 3, 2. I changed the order, not the grouping. And then this one, 5 times -1. What property is that? That is the I'm just going to call it the -1 property. Okay? All right, so where are you going to use that stuff in real life? You're not. Not really. But your parents actually do, and you might also. So over here I said simplify. So I have 7 plus 5 plus 3. Not too hard, right? I can go 7. I can start with 7. I can count my hands. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then 13, 14, and 15, right? So what does that have to do with any of my properties? Well, I can use the commutative property, and it's what a lot of parents do, and a lot of you might do this, is you change the order of the numbers. I can go, you know what, I know that 7 plus 3, that makes 10. And 10 plus 5, well, that makes 15. And I didn't have to count on my hands, right? Why? Because I changed it around. I put the 7 and added that with the 3, just because it was easier. Now I come down here, same thing. I got 21 plus 6 plus 9. Now I could again count up, use my fingers, whatever, type it in the calculator. But say I'm just in the middle of a store. Well, I might instead go, well, 21 plus a 9, well, that gives me 30. That gives me a nice round number. So I actually might go 21 plus 9 to get to 30, and then I add 30 to 6, and that gives me 36. Right? So I get 36. It just makes it easier in my head. Now look at this one. This says 10 times 2